Hey gang, how's it going? It is minus 40 fucking degrees outside right now. It is like freeze your tauntaun to death cold in Saskatoon.
Hey, steady girl. Hey, what's the matter? You smell something?
So I'd have to be absolutely certifiably crazy to be journeying out in this weather to go see a movie. But that's what I'm gonna do, and that's how I roll. So I'm going to go check out A Monster Calls. Now, it should also be noted that this film should not in any way, shape, or form be confused with that other monster movie.
I got everything going for me. I'm not a bad person. I'm a real good person.
You're gonna need a box of these to make it through this movie.
I wish I had 100 years. 100 years I could give to you.
Trust me.
Of course you are afraid, but you will make it through. For this is why you called me. Come on.
Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering why my hair is a different color now compared to before, it's the magic of editing. I got my hair colored before I went and saw the movie. Huh?
No way.
Okay, so it was so bloody cold when I got out of A Monster Calls. It was like minus 45 degrees Celsius with the wind chill. It is like freeze your tauntaun to death cold in Saskatoon. So I didn't feel like doing my review of A Monster Calls in my car ride on the way home, so I decided to do it in the comfy confines of my very toasty warm apartment. Monster Calls is a sort of this dark fantasy drama which is directed by J.A. Bayona, who previously directed a couple of really interesting films, The Orphanage, as well as the very good The Impossible, and of course this is based on a book of the same name by Patrick Ness. The basis of the story is this. There's this young lad named Connor, who's played by MacDougall, and he's a young boy who is really trying to come to grips with the inevitable death of his mother, who is suffering from terminal cancer, and she's played by Felicity Jones.
There's that.
And while he's trying to process his feelings over that, he's dealing with not only his strict and domineering grandmother, who's played by Sigourney Weaver.
Don't touch anything.
But he's also trying to deal with his feelings about his estranged father, who's played by Toby Kebbell.
I'm sorry you have to face this, but you have to be brave. Do you understand?
And to make matters even worse, and to kick this poor kid while he's emotionally down, he's being attacked by school bullies. God damn it. God damn! So one night, at exactly 7 minutes after midnight, Connor encounters this gigantic tree-like monster who kind of looks like, sort of like Groot crossed with the Ents from Lord of the Rings, and he's voiced by Liam Neeson. The monster is trying to impart some wisdom on Connor and basically tells him that he's going to tell him 3 specific stories with 3 morals. And after he tells them, he will leave Connor to tell him a story back.
I have come to get you, Connor O'Malley.
And of course, the monster comes at 12:07 every single night and is sort of invisible to everyone else around Connor except for Connor. And ultimately, Connor not only has to deal with the lessons that this monster is imparting on him, but he also has to deal with the reality of his situation with his dying mother.
I am as old as this land, and I will...
Did you know about anything?
I know everything about you, Connor O'Malley.
No, you don't! If you did, you know I don't have time to listen to stupid stories or stupidry that is just a dream.
One thing right off the bat that I really loved about A Monster Calls is that this is a very adult-themed film, and this is definitely not for children. Even though the marketing campaign of this film really has clearly marketed it as a family film, I think it is by no means for children. I think it may be a little bit too intense for wee young tykes. It deals with some really sobering and, you know, impactful themes that are easy to absorb and understand, but maybe a little bit too much for young viewers. I mean, it's a kind of a coming of age film, but it deals with some very universal themes about the nature of grief and loss and coming to grips with the startling unavoidability of losing someone very close to you. And it also shows how children find very unique portals to deal with such unimaginable pains.
Whoa, indeed.
On the performance front, I think A Monster Calls is really solid. I think sometimes performances get lost in these fantasy films, but I in particular liked Felicity Jones. I thought she was deeply effective and very moving as this mother. And then of course you got guys like Toby Kebbell, who we're used to seeing in motion capture form, but he gives a really thanklessly decent performance as this absentee father. He's not a one note or one stooge antagonist here. He's simply a man that's, you know, doing the very best that he can under some very troubling circumstances. And I really like the atypical approach to this father character. And then of course we got Lewis MacDougall, which I think he gives one of the finer and more nuanced child performances that I've seen in a long time. And the emotional gamut that he has to run is really quite intense. And he really brings a portrait of young misery and angst with a lot of texture and nuance. And you really gain a startling impression that this is a very lost boy that's really struggling to find his place in the world while dealing with schoolyard bullies and also while dealing with the fact that his mother is certainly dying. You know, another thing that I really enjoyed about A Monster Calls was the actual look of the monster himself. There's very little attempts to make this monster cute and cuddly and more palpable for audience members, especially young. I mean, he's kind of a horrifying looking creature when it really boils down to it. And Liam Neeson, he has that bassy vocal presence that I think brings the right level of gravitas to this role. He really has a level of intimidating menace while at the same time feeling like an inviting character, if that makes any sense.
What is a dream, Connor O'Malley? And who is to say that it is not everything else that is a dream?
The film also looks absolutely sensational. And the three stories that the monster tells a young boy are really handled with remarkable panache. One in particular is rendered as this sort of watercolor animated painting come thrillingly to life. And I like the fact that this is not really clean looking animation. I mean, there's a rough texture to all the characters, and the film's, you know, conceptual imagination is really breathtaking at times. So that's one thing that I really admired about A Monster Calls.
What shall I destroy next?
Break the windows!
Break them yourself.
I also like too that there is a complexity to the meaning behind the monster stories, which is positively refreshing. In some form or another, they're all sort of tapping in to that nagging ambiguity of like human nature, and it really taps into this theme that when all is said and done, and if you pardon the expression, shit happens in life that people young and old really have to deal with. So again, I really liked how that was kind of thrown into the film as well.
There was once an invisible man who had grown tired of being unseen. It was not that he was actually invisible. It was just that people had become used to not seeing him.
I think the film doesn't have very many missteps. If there was one area of the film that I disliked, and this is kind of paradoxical, I thought Sigourney Weaver was part of the best and the worst elements of this film. You have to hear me out on this because she has this very tricky role as this wicked grandmother. And she never really succumbs to wicked or vile grandmother stereotypes. She has a very complex character. And she, along with the boy, is going through a process of grief. But at the same time, her English accent is really distracting. It's not like Kevin Costner as Robin Hood bad at times.
Then we must stop fighting amongst ourselves and face it, the price for it may be dear.
No! No! No!
But then again, she really makes up for it with these really powerful sequences. One in particular that involves silence and an exchange of glances between her and the young boy that is just so pitch perfectly rendered. And I thought Sigourney Weaver did a bravura job during those moments. It's just every time she spoke, I'm like, that accent isn't working for me.
No!
I guess all in all that, you know, considering that this film is a fantasy and it involves a rather large talking monstrous tree, it feels dramatically grounded. I know that sounds kind of weird to say, but it feels grounded and raw and authentic. And it contains many thoughtfully and considerately developed characters, which is, again, very refreshing to see in a film like this. And it absolutely frustrates me to no end to think that absolutely no one is seeing A Monster Calls, because I think it's a very special film that should be seen by a lot of people. And right now it's really struggling at the box office. So I'm really taking a call to arms, so to speak, to get people to go see this film. And I think Monster Calls is a film that's to be admired. Absolutely.
And if you need to break things, by God, you break them.
You're going to need a box of these. So there you go. There's my review of A Monster Calls. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the film, if you were one of the very few people that actually saw it. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you could like it, I would really appreciate it. If you could subscribe to my channel, that would mean the world to me. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you all at the movies.